What's going on, y'all? This is Isaiah Fowler, the founder of SWAV Eyewear and SWAV Agency. And today we got a good podcast episode. You already know, every Monday and Wednesday, we're coming to you with some really good information regarding the direct-to-consumer business model, right? Direct-to-consumer is the most powerful business model on the planet because it allows you to go directly to where the people are at, so that you can grow your business, build your business, make more online sales, get more customer data. Then you can leverage that customer data to be able to continue to grow and build your business. So with that being said, we have a really good episode today. I have two things that you're gonna have to master for you to murder e-commerce and direct to consumer. Got two things for you. Right? One is inside of the other one, but there's two separate things. So the two things that you're going to have to master, I'm talking about to the T, but specific to you in order to really have a very strong online presence, e-com brand. I like to say direct to consumer. Some people say e-com, but direct to consumer just basically meaning that, all your sales are coming from your website. You have a direct relationship with your customers, right? So with that being said, that's what I mean when I say direct to consumer. But two things that you're going to need to master is your aesthetic and your positioning. So I'm going to talk about both of them, of course. So your positioning is much more important than marketing. And I did a whole video last month about that. Positioning is more important than marketing, okay? I'm gonna say that one more time. Positioning is more important than marketing. Positioning is, what do we stand for? What do we want our customers to feel like? Just really planning everything out, right? And mapping everything out. Marketing allows you to communicate and point to your position, right? That's what marketing and positioning is. So you really need to focus on your positioning. Positioning is one of the most important things. The next thing I said is your aesthetic. Now, when I started to really focus on my aesthetic, I started to see some really good feedback. And I started to see things really grow when I focused on my aesthetic. Now, your aesthetic stems from your positioning, right? And it allows you to have something to market, right? So your aesthetic, when I say aesthetic, what I mean is, yes, brand colors and things like that, but what is the aesthetic of our photo shoots? What is the look that we're going for? And this look needs to be tied to a feeling. Like when people really see our photos, our photo shoots, our photography, what does it really look like? What does it really feel like? How do we feel when we see this stuff? And then you also want to have an aesthetic of your products, okay? When I say this, what I mean is like, if you have, let's say you do have an apparel company, right? You have an apparel company and you are trying to get your aesthetic down. You don't want to look like other people. So that's what the aesthetic is. And it ties into the brand. But, what type of apparel are we putting out? Is it like high quality apparel? And we're charging, let's say $100 for a sweatshirt. And that's our aesthetic. And then, is the aesthetic like a outdoorsy aesthetic? Is it like a office aesthetic? What's the real aesthetic here? I swear to you, this is one thing that when I really started to focus on our aesthetic, is so important. Words can't even explain. Really, like, if you're in fashion, aesthetic is super important. But think about it. If you're not in fashion and aesthetic is important in fashion, if you take the fashion mindset and double down on your aesthetic, that will allow you to stand out inside of the market and the industry that you are operating in. So your aesthetic is super important. When you have a solid aesthetic, that's another part of the brand. And like what happens is people will be able to associate your brand with the aesthetic. So now it allows conversions to go up on the website as well with purchasing, because people know what they're getting. Because you already have a set up aesthetic. And so people already like have this built-in trust behind what you're doing, what you're putting out, what products you sell, right? Aesthetic is so important. Aesthetic will communicate your brand to the person on the end, you know what I'm saying? On the end, on the other side of the receiving end of how you're distributing your content. Aesthetic is so freaking important, y'all. I can't stress that enough. Because when you don't have like a defined aesthetic, and some may call this visual branding, but I like to call it aesthetic, because I feel like visual branding is like, you know, your flyers, of course, your website, but your aesthetic is the whole feel. Like the ins and outs, from your emails to your products, the actual product, to your product packaging, to your photo shoots, to your flyers, to the website, to how your videos are. And with the aesthetic, once you find somebody solid, from a photography, like a photographer to shoot your product, like your photo shoots, you're gonna need to find somebody that can basically shoot the same type of videos that match up with the aesthetic of the photos, and that match up with the aesthetic of like how the brand is on the website and everything else as well, right? So honestly, you don't wanna be having a lot of different contractors, from graphic designers to photographers. Like once you find somebody good, like let's say, for example, a photographer, once you find a good photographer and they got your aesthetic down, don't change them. Don't keep switching them up, right? Because your customers are going to be able to tell that and everything. You want to have a solid aesthetic, or you want to have an aesthetic so solid and strong that it doesn't matter who does it, right? They are able to replicate that. So you want to have like a standard of excellence from your aesthetic, from the perspective of having an aesthetic. This is so important, yo. Like literally, this is so important, because a lot of people, well, you know, some people, they don't have the aesthetic down. If you were to do an event, would you know how you would want it to look? If you don't, then we gotta work a little bit on the aesthetic, right? What would the room look like? How big would it be? What would the vibe be? What type of music would be playing, right? What color products would you have? Would it be more airy and like lighter colors, or would it be darker and earth tones? These are different things that you really want to think about, because you got to understand that like you're creating an ambiance. That's how I look at it. When you have a product-based business and you have the visuals, like you're creating an ambiance. And when you create this ambiance, it starts to become inviting for people to want to come towards. So, you just want to think about that. Your aesthetic. Like in Q3 and Q4, I really doubled down on my aesthetic, big time. I fine-tuned it, I refined it, and I started just obsessing over my aesthetic. And things started to, people started to really respond to it very, very, very well. So you got your aesthetic and you got your positioning. I did a whole video on how positioning is more important than marketing. So definitely go check that video out. And yeah, it's in the same playlist under the SWAV Podcast playlist, but aesthetic and positioning. And your positioning is the foundation of everything. You market your position. Your aesthetic is the visual piece of what you're marketing that will, point towards your position. So that's what I got for y'all today, man. Every Monday and Wednesday, we coming to you with another episode. And just know that everything you do in life, it starts with a vision. And we're going to check you on the next episode. Peace.